but when you step like to the left or the right of the toilet and kind of put your weight down, you can feel the floor like waving because they took out all the support. And I feel bad because someone's going to come in and buy that cash with no inspection. They're going to get in and see that their floor there's no support on it. That toilet is literally being held up by subfloor. It's baffling. So that's a worry of mine. But yeah, all the prices are going up, which means they can sell it at a higher price, but they're getting it at a higher price, and they're feeling like they can cut some corners to try and make some ends meet. And a little scary.
Yeah, we have also a problem with Canadian government putting apparently they're putting very, very bad laws in place for people like us, because already we're taxed at a very high rate, and Quebec is the worst province to be taxed in. And then now they consider that you are making too much profit, which is, what's the definition of too much profit? Basically, they're gonna like really restrict you, and even as a landlord also. So they're really, really trying to squeeze, which is really stupid, because that's a way of us contributing to the economy. We're like a small entrepreneur, but they're really trying to squeeze us out of this business.
Yeah. Is that as of recent?
Yeah, it's recent. The law hasn't officially passed. They've been like threatening it, and nobody knows when it's going to actually happen and what exactly is going to be in it. But they say it's going to be either this year or next year.
Gotcha. Is that with the new president coming in, or is that?
Well, we don't have a president.
Or prime minister?
Yeah, no,
Sorry.
It's Trudeau. Yeah, it's Trudeau. Well, he was been reelected in the fall, so he's got another term. I don't know, 4 years or something.
Okay.
So yeah, and it's becoming, it's becoming harder and harder to do work, even renovation work here, and they're taxing you everywhere, and they're asking for all sorts of licenses, and it's only in Quebec. And it's ridiculous because they're asking like to pay for like a contractor license, which is totally useless and it doesn't mean anything. It's just the government collecting more money. And now we just got an email that starting in April, they're going to require to maintain your license, you're going to have to follow continuing education courses every 2 years, like up to 32 hours. And obviously, you have to pay for those courses, right?
Yep.
So like we're at an age where we just we're done with this. Like we need to move on and find other ways of income. That's why I'm looking into Airbnb some properties like in Italy and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, welcome to continuing education. It's a blast. But yours is 36 hours. Ours is only 12.
Yeah.
So every 2 years we do 12 hours.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I didn't think it was that much.
No, but I get to do continuing education on the GC route and then continuing education on the agent route too. So I get 24 hours every 2 years.
I didn't get to do continuing education for the GC part.
Yep. It's a blast. And at least on the agent side, they've got, and I don't know what it is up in Canada, but we actually get like videos, and we have an attorney who's working with the state who talks to you, and it's more of like not quite a Zoom meeting where it's a conversation, but at least you get some personality behind it and you get some face to look at. Yeah. The GC one is a little gray square at the top of your screen that just goes through a bunch of questions about codes and all that. It is the most monotonous, boring training I've ever had to do.
At least for the agent side too, you can kind of choose which courses you want to take for the continuing education too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, the GC one is here's your information.
Yeah, I think they have the same thing for agents here. They have modules, like small modules. I was even thinking of doing like a course for agents, like basics of home staging, because I don't think they should be home staging, but they think they should be home staging for their clients anyway, so they still do it. But then I know that they can get those little modules which are accredited, and so they get their units, continuing educational units for them. So how am I going to compete with that,
Right.
So anyway, I'm all yours. I don't want to, so you have specific questions you want to ask, but what are we talking about?
Yeah, we do it just as we're doing right now, just a conversation. There's no like impromptu, or there's no prompted questions. We started doing that in the beginning and we felt like it wasn't a good flow for the show. So we'll do a little intro, and then basically you'd give your background of what led you to the position you're in. We can talk a little bit about what you're doing, and then you can obviously talk about what you've discovered and what you're trying to get to over in Southern Italy and all those kind of things. So you get to run the show. I'll just ask questions and you can answer how you want. If you ever get stuck, we edit the show so you can take your time to think of your answers and all that stuff. But otherwise, I just like to see where the conversation goes.
Okay, yeah, I want to talk about maybe like Natasha mentioned about some trends, market trends, even for people who are selling or also for people who are staying, because there's some interesting things happening this year related to, you know, our change of the lifestyle.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be very cool. And then just so I don't get your name wrong, Sveta? Okay, perfect. All right, and then we're episode 8, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Double checked.
Perfect. Well, welcome to the end of the week here, MVP Real Estate Podcast. We have Sveta here from Canada. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for giving us the time.
Thank you for having me on your show again. I'm always happy to talk with you guys and share our experiences.
Yeah. And welcome back. And we're going to talk a little bit. You wanted to get into trends that you're seeing right now. Before we get into the trends and what you're seeing, can you give the viewers a little bit of a background about what you do? And I know you're in a little bit of a transition, so we'll get into where you're going in the show. But currently, what are you doing right now, just so they have a background?
So my name is Sveta, and I have been a professional home stager and decorator in Montreal, Canada since 2006. When at that time, pretty much nobody knew what home staging was. At least here locally, it was more known in the Western USA, particularly around Washington and California. This is where the trend started. But gradually, people came to realize that a well-presented, well-showcased, well-updated house sells much quicker and for a lot more money, which of course makes a lot of sense. And that's how the profession of home staging was born. So I got into that profession after being in the information technology arena for the first part of my career. And then I really wanted to go into something more creative and something that would have direct impact on people, and I could make a difference in people's lives, even in a small way. And so since 2006, I was developing my business. I had a physical business in a local business in Montreal, Canada, and I did quite well. But after, I guess, 13 years or so, I realized that with the climate that we have, and it was just so much work, physical work, which people don't realize, but you have to carry furniture, you have to carry a lot of stuff up and down the stairs. And I always thought that I would be useful to a lot more people by being online and being able to share my expertise and things that I've learned and kind of customized. I've created a particular simple method of how people can update, prepare, and stage their own homes for sale. And I can help them and guide them into the best possible efficient way of doing that so that they can sell their house for top price. And that's what I've been doing. So I basically took my business online in the last 3 years or so.
That's awesome. I actually just went through a showing with someone who was unaware that the house was vacant. And they got tipped off that it was vacant because they went into closets and they're like, there's no clothes in here, but there's beds and tables and decorations. I was like, oh yeah, this is staged. And they're like, what do you mean it's staged? And I was like, there's companies out there that literally come in, put up decor, put up furniture, and then take it out once the house sells. And that like blew their mind.
Yes, so I'm surprised that there's still people out there who don't know what home staging is, because you know, like it was normal 15 years ago, but today I rarely meet people who have no idea what it is. But yes, there's two different types of staging. One is the one that you're referring to, where it's a vacant property, and vacant properties are not that today everything sells, but under normal market circumstances, vacant properties are more difficult to sell. But also, people, whoever comes in, psychologically, if there is nothing to look at but bare walls and ceiling and floor, obviously they're gonna notice all the flaws so much more. And also most people have no sense of proportions, and they cannot visualize what a room would look like if it had, proper furniture. And that is the reason why the sellers of vacant properties invest a couple of thousands of dollars usually, or even more, to present and showcase a house. So the goal is not to trick someone into thinking that it's actually lived in home, but the reason for doing that is to allow potential buyer to visualize themselves living in that space and seeing how that space could be utilized at its best potential. And also psychologically, people just get attracted to a room that is nicely decorated and nicely presented, instead of just staring into 4 empty walls. And so that's the reason behind what we call the vacant staging, which is what you referred to. Now, where I specialize, because I'm online, I can advise somebody on what package they should get, like how much furniture. But obviously, if I am in Montreal and my client is in Wisconsin, I cannot physically bring the furniture over and set it up for them. So my specialty now is helping people in lived-in homes, so people who actually live in the house, or sometimes they're in a transition, so they still live in the house, but maybe they're buying another house and then they're not really sure how they're going to move and what they should leave behind. But the idea is always the same, is to present the property that you're selling in the most advantageous way. And this is where I help people to do that.
Yeah. And I think you framed it correctly. It's not to like mislead the buyer who's coming in, because I know on my showings, people are always in like the living room. They're like, do you think our couch would fit in here? Do you think our bed would fit in this bedroom? Like, where would it go? So those type of things, just giving them like the path of least resistance, where the room is kind of formed to set up this way. This big of a couch can fit here. This size TV can fit up here, that kind of thing. It definitely goes a long way.
That is the reason. And also, when people are buying, let's say if you go into somebody else's home because it's a lived-in home, you don't want it to look at other people's stuff. So when you go, most people are unable to visualize. So if you go into somebody's home, which is very cluttered, and the closets are full of stuff, and there's, all this food out on the kitchen counters, and, sometimes some things floating in the toilet, or which I've seen, you obviously psychologically, you are not really attracted to that type of property, and you don't necessarily see the potential. Only very few people see the potential. Most people, over 90% of people, only see what's shown to them. So what I teach home sellers is to take a little bit of time and put in a little bit of effort and a little bit of investment to turn their house into this, model home or showcase home as much as possible. And it's an absolutely proven technique that will help them generate a lot more sales, a lot more quicker, and they will get a lot more money for their house.
Yeah. And obviously the whole home staging thing does demand its own industry, because that's something that it does take time. It's not the most fun process. Everybody here has moved once. No one said that they had a blast moving. Now do that like every day, moving furniture in and out. So it's a hard job. What we've started doing on the home flips and the renovations is drawing like mock-ups of the room. So we have everything proportional. We're able to put in furniture, but it's all digital, so they can
there is something called, you're talking about virtual staging, I suppose. I do that as well.
Yeah, it's not necessarily their house. We basically build a model, a digital model, and we can put like the sized vanity that would fit there, or how big the shower would, or what the tile would look like if you put that in. Is that kind of still in the visual staging world?
Well, you can do, there's something that's called virtual staging, and it's pretty much the same idea, and I provide that service. I don't think it is the ultimate service. To me, it's more of a band-aid, but
Yeah.
there are certain circumstances where people are either unable to afford real staging or for whatever, but basically virtual staging requires taking pictures of empty rooms, or
Yeah.
sometimes if there is a piece or two of furniture, it can be removed for an extra cost, but you can't take a fully cluttered home and do virtual staging on that. But if you
Yeah.
have a vacant home or semi-vacant home, you can take a photo and then we can add digital furniture and digital accessories to it. And people really like it for appeal. It shows them what a room could look like. But
Right.
to me, it's not a proper full solution, because when
Right.
they go into the house, they still see whatever is actually there.
Yeah. And
So-
we're a little bit different because we're not, this is on the flip side or the renovation side. So if you go into a house you already own and you want to finish your basement and it's all concrete block, we get to be able to create that digitally and put in a walkthrough of what the basement would look like, because you can't throw furniture down and be like, this is what it's going to look like. And it also helps them visualize the space and what they can break their basement or addition into space wise with like partition walls and all that. It is like a pre band-aid to it all.
Yeah, okay. But
Yeah.
it's for your clients who want to do the flips?
No, they could be homeowners and they own their house, but their basement was never finished because
Also
new
for
builds.
renovation purposes.
Yes, so new
Okay.
builds here, the trend is like they'll do the basement, they'll upcharge you for it, but otherwise they basically just go everything first floor up and they leave the basement just
Unfinished.
open. Yep. So we
Yeah.
can go in and take a floor plan and then build a digital model of what their basement would
So it's
look
like a designer. It's like an interior designer design plan. Yeah.
Yeah, before you can actually get to putting all the furniture in.
Yeah.
Just give them some spatial recognition on it. It seems to help because they don't go through a lot of renovations. They don't buy a lot of homes. So to give them some sort of a visual appeal of what it could look like helps them see it. People that go through it all the time, you can see what's going to happen in a space or where you put this furniture or like the decor going on this wall. You can kind of see that as you go through it more and more. But I've realized it's harder for people that maybe they've only done one basement remodel in their whole life. So they're not really as, I don't know, prone to seeing, like you were saying, visualizing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a tool that helps.
I'm still having a hard time figuring out where to put my artwork after we painted our walls. Like I don't know how you do it every day.
Well, I think it's, like I said, some people have this innate ability, and it's really a minority of people. And I never thought I had that ability, to be honest, until I hit like my 40s. And then all of a sudden, and I was never really even interested in decorating and remodeling. But then there's a couple of things that happen in my life. One is when I decided to go into home staging, and I kind of learned over time, but I also realized that I somehow do have this innate eye where I can look at a space and I kind of see it in my mind's eye what it should look like, and I can't explain it more than that. And then the second thing that happened is when I met my second husband. He is a contractor and he's been in renovation business for over 20 years, so we started doing things together. And of course, from experience, obviously we started with one first flip, and then every time we do flip a property and we have to do the whole redesign of the space, and we do it together, and we fight a lot, of course. I usually win, but he's responsible more for the all the technical sides, like you were saying, is about making sure that everything is done up to the construction code and that everything is done properly, whether I am more responsible for the look and the design and ideas. But we discuss everything together. We're actually in the middle of a flip, and this one is an interesting story, because because of the market being so crazy, as we were talking about, and houses going so fast, and literally with like multiple offers, right, in within 24 hours, I actually bought a house while my husband was away in Israel. And it was the first time I've ever done that. No inspection, nothing. I just walked into the house with an agent who was not, much help, to be honest. And I don't know what I was looking at. And I bid on it, and we won. So that was kind of a worrisome situation, but everything so far, everything is turning, like we don't seem to be having any major issues. The house is small, so it's about 850 square foot ranch. You call it ranch, we call it bungalow, the same thing, but
Yeah.
we're doubling up the space because the basement was unfinished. And so we're able to put 2 more bedrooms, a family room, and a laundry bathroom into
Wow.
the basement. So the
That's
house is, has plus sides. It has a very big yard. So at the beginning, my husband was kind of negative because he felt that the house is small, which it is. But with the prices that are so crazy and the inventory is being so low, we're really hoping that it's going to work out. But it's a full rehab. Like we had to change the total layout of the house. It's a big job. Hopefully we'll be done by May, and then we'll see, right?
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. So is that, I know you were talking a little bit about a transition in career path. Do you expect that being your last flip?
Um, I hope not, because to be honest, I really enjoy flipping homes, and I've been thinking about it a lot versus what you do as well, which is buy and hold. And buy and hold is kind of boring to me because it's more of an admin and dealing with tenants and fixing problems, where the reason why we love flips, it's because it's creative, and it's taking something that's really ugly in the beginning, and then going through the unexpected, very stressful, right? Most people don't realize how stressful it is, and sometimes it requires a lot more money than you thought. But at the end, when you actually see the result, honestly, we're really proud of what we accomplished, and we don't cut corners. We do everything the way we would do it for our own house. So we usually never have problems at the inspection, and I just like seeing the end result, because that's my creation, my art is in that. But so that will depend, on the market. So of course, as you know, right now the market is very difficult, but I do enjoy flips, and I think it's something that is really of value to us, but also of value to other people. But at the same time, in terms of my business, I realize that now I have enough experience. I think we've done about 12 or 13 flips. So at this point, I have enough experience to advise other people, for the first time investors, the first time flippers. So my pivoting is a little bit towards being more of a real estate coach for people. So I can help them from the decorating perspective or home staging perspective, but also updating their homes if they want to sell, and not just fluffing it up and painting a room and putting a couple of pieces of artwork, but the actual updating on what's important, which will increase the resale value for them to generate them even more money. And if somebody is a first-time investor and they're worried about how the process should go, I'm working on that right now, is kind of taking my personal experience and distilling it, crystallizing it into some kind of coaching and a training program for first-time investors.
That would be fun. And I know that's needed because there's a lot of investors out there that, I guess new investors that don't know what they don't know. So to have like
Exactly.
a coach there to help them with all the things that come up and pop up randomly as you go through construction and then resale. I know that there's people out there that can use that service. So that's awesome that you're transitioning into that.
Yeah.
And you were talking a little bit about some trends that you were seeing. Are you seeing that because of this transition, The more and more you
No,
research on
not.
it,
I
or-
actually researched it for my my Facebook community. I have a pretty large Facebook community, and at the end of each year, I take the time to look at decorating trends for the year to come, and it's a very interesting thing because everybody says something different most of the time,
Yeah.
but I try to find commonalities. And there is this particular year in 2022, there is some very interesting commonalities that came out, which make a lot of sense. And it makes a lot of sense because of the lifestyle that people transitioned to in the last 2 years because of the pandemic, and the way everybody feels during that time of people staying at home and kind of cocooning, and not so much travel, and hopefully it will change very soon. So the trends that came out for 2022 is a green color, which is very surprising, and we haven't seen that in a long time. Different shades of green, but why green? Because it's peaceful and it's nature related.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense because people were depressed and kind of staying indoors and not socializing so much. So they're bringing a little bit of nature into the inside. And that continues with decorating trends, for example, that involve a lot of plants and wood. Anything that's natural wood, anything that has to do with nature, actually. So what we're seeing in terms of materials also is natural wood, rattan, oak, and combination with live plants. Now, there's some crazy plant people, right? Sometimes I come into a house and literally you can't see their windows because they have so many plants. I'm not myself a green thumb, but I am seeing that because it also has therapeutic effect having plants. So in this year, it's a big decorating and interior design trend, incorporating plants into the look of the house. So those are like the major things that we're seeing. And we're seeing less of cold colors like gray, and we're going more towards warmer shades. And again, everything goes around in circles, right? Any kind of fashion or trends goes around in circles. So like when beiges were in style, then beige went out of style and we went towards gray. So now beige is coming back into style. So we're seeing more of earthy, natural, warmer colors again, all for the same reason, to make people feel good in their home.
I have a question. I heard that the open floor plan trend was starting to phase out and they're becoming more like individual spaces because everybody has been home so much. Are you seeing that as well?
Well, it's, I think it's very individual taste.
Mm-hmm.
And it has always been. Like, I have a friend who does not like open floor plans because she doesn't like the kitchen being open to the rest of the space because she feels that, the smells and everything else, she doesn't like that. But yes, I've seen that as a trend, the main reason is exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be some kind of a combination, because I think the most important thing is people are not necessarily looking for formal dining spaces or like very closed, cells. What they are looking for, though, is a permanent home office space.
Yes.
I actually wrote a big blog post recently, an article. It's kind of a pet peeve of mine to see what you see, in the background, right?
Yes.
And because I see sometimes people are doing Zoom calls literally from their bed, or you see like a pile of laundry and kids' toys and unmade bed behind them, and they're trying to look professional. And to me, like, it's just distracting and totally unprofessional. So it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, and I have an article that I wrote about it and how to make your background look professional in a simple way. But people are definitely needing, whether it's, if they're lucky enough like me, where I have a separate room in my house right now, which I can dedicate to my office. But if people don't have that, then they need to somehow limit a certain space somewhere to make it into their little private working space. So that, in that respect, definitely we're seeing this. This is becoming of a more of a permanent feature.
For sure. I wish we had space in our house. So you were talking about your little house. Mine's even smaller. It's 740 square feet. So little bitty.
On one floor?
On one floor.
You don't have a basement?
No basement.
And how many people live there?
Two adults and one child. Half.
And then two massive dogs.
And then two
Don't forget the dogs.
Yeah, well, you know, for like office space, there's some clever ways of doing it. Like, so I've seen people, for example, under the stairs or even in a closet, like literally.
My office is technically in my closet. I was just so tired of being like in the little closet today, but I have like a little curtain in the background and all this stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to get creative for sure.
Yeah.
So I also like Airbnb. I also have some experience with that, and I'm also building more on that experience because I think that trend is not going away.
No, it is.
And I think it's an interesting way of bringing some revenue in. So Natasha, when we were talking, and she said she has a long-term tenant, and I'm curious, to know your experience. Like, what do you think of short-term rentals versus long-term rentals?
Well, it's really funny you asked that. My husband and I, we were just discussing this the other day because we were looking at getting a second property out in Oregon. And we were saying, well, we wanted this property to be closer to the beach. And we're like, well, it would be really nice if we could use the property for us too and have it as an Airbnb. And so we were sitting on that discussion for a while. And then I'm a member of a lot of like Airbnb owner groups on Facebook. And some of the stories you hear from them are just so like detrimental. I'm just like, I don't know. I feel really comfortable because our property management company vets everybody who would be a potential renter with us. So that makes me feel really comfortable knowing that they're going to vet these people. They're going to do, biannual check-ins on them. They're going to really make sure that the property is being taken care of. So that's why we really like the long-term renters as opposed to the short-term renters. It just, for us, it gives us the sense of security. Now, I mean, on the flip side too, we also understand that the Airbnb renters could be a much better income producer, but we just feel more comfortable with the long-term renters.
Yeah, it's definitely a different transition or mindset to look into, because I do think that Airbnb would bring in more income, but again, there's more turnover, there's more cleaning, there's more communication, there's just more work to it. So
it's a lot of work.
You go with that income work balance in terms of what you want. And that is one big thing that I'm trying to get over too, because I would love Airbnbs, but your property manager and you need to talk way more consistently. Your cleaners are out there way more consistently.
Fees are higher,
I've never had property managers. I mean, I had in Dominican Republic, and it was not a good experience. I prefer doing it myself. Yeah, no, having property managers.
Oh, okay.
And paying them a fee for basically not doing much. That's what it turned out to be for me.
Yeah, it's kind of like an insurance policy. Hopefully whether you have insurance or not, but you pay your insurance, and then when you cannot do it or you need their help, they're there. And hopefully your tenants aren't damaging your property, and hopefully your tenants are paying their dues. It's kind of the beast of investing out of state or out of your area.
Yeah, because also Airbnb, there's an additional expense. Obviously, you have to furnish the property. Right. So you have to at the front end, you have to be able to invest maybe $5,000 or $10,000, and you have to fully equip it. So up to the last towel and last coffee day. So that's the thing. So once you do that, though, like in Montreal, we have a problem with Airbnbs because they don't want them anymore. So it's impossible to get licenses. So the only way to get around it is to actually rent for 31 days up to 11 months, because then it falls into this crack in between the rental board and the short-term rentals, because anything that's over 31 days is considered to be not short-term rental anymore. So that's something
Really?
that I'm considering, because when we move out of the, where we are in right now, if we move to the lake house, then I have to make a decision on what am I going to do with my unit here. And so I'm still undecided whether I should try to rent it long term, because then it's very difficult to kick the tenants out if you need the property back and you
Yep.
don't know what condition it's going to be in, or whether I will try that, not the real Airbnb, like not 2 or 3 days at a time. I'm not interested in that, but maybe there is an alternative. And I actually did it before very successfully before COVID. My apartment upstairs, I rented it out to people from France, because we have a French school from France very close by, and it was furnished, and literally they came with their suitcases. Everything was there for them. They were supposed to stay 3 months. They stayed 2 years. And then I had a second family from France the same way, the same thing. They came for 3 months. They stayed 2 years, and everybody was very, very happy. But my apartment was fully furnished, and they paid
Yeah.
more rent. You could charge a lot more when the apartment is furnished.
Premium.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. And there's municipality rules to the Airbnb situation, like we were saying with the short term. But as you were alluding to, there's always, I'll call them loopholes. There's always loopholes. Some municipalities don't do short term, like where me and Natasha live, they will not accept Airbnbs. They don't want them.
Well, I mean,
But there are Airbnbs in our area, and the few that have them, they're doing it for traveling nurses. So they'll sign a contract with the agency that schedules the nurses, and that is scheduled for months at a time. Now, what nurse is in there by a need basis, that all flips. So it was kind of a unique, the contract is signed for, let's say, 4 to 6 months, but you could have 20 different nurses in there at a time at
I
whatever
don't
day.
think we have, I don't think we have that concept in Canada of traveling nurses.
Oh,
I
really?
don't think it exists
Yeah, we've
yet.
got traveling
I've never heard
nurses,
of this.
traveling PAs. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's for clinics and all that stuff.
Maybe I'll look at that or
Yeah, maybe I'll look at that. You too, Natasha. Yeah, you should investigate that.
yeah, because you can charge more, and that's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was pretty interesting. I was doing that when I was researching buying my first property out of state. And obviously, I would only need it for maybe 4 weekends out of the year. Uh, but I went down the route of like, okay, if I buy this, what is the easiest path for Airbnb? Because I'm not interested in fielding a lot of phone calls. I'm not interested in getting a call at 2 a.m. because something breaks out of state. So I would need to get a property manager, but what would be the easiest path? And that traveling nurse, I think it came up in another podcast I was listening to, the concept of renting out to the company, and then the company would pretty much tell you who's living there.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And if you can get in with bigger, if you buy in, let's say, a city that has a big manufacturing plant, you might be able to, if they've got transient workers who go from plant to plant, like that's another avenue to go into.
Yeah.
But that's all infrastructure within your city that you're looking at. So you can get creative with it. You just have to do some digging on it, but it's possible.
Good ideas. Excellent ideas.
It's possible. So you were alluding a little bit before we started recording about some changes to the laws up in Canada that is now kind of restricting house flippers or rehabbers.
Yeah, I don't know much about it yet, but I've seen some articles, and it's been going around in Facebook groups that I'm in for real estate investment. And basically, they are talking about our federal government in Canada imposing even more restrictions and even more taxes on people who are making their living from real estate, even being a landlord or being resell properties. The idea is that the government somehow is going to judge whether you're making too much profit, and they want to restrict the people's activities because in that area, because they feel that it squeezes the lower income population out of decent living. So they just feel that a lot of people are speculating and making unreasonable profits. So it's becoming more and more difficult to operate in that arena for sure.
That's a sticky situation. I
It
hope
is.
it works out good for you guys up there. I know
Or
that there
are we
was.
buying out of state? That's what we're looking at, right? That's our next move, is to look out of state or out of the country.
Yeah, because I was going to say this is federal. This isn't Providence.
No,
Okay,
apparently it's
correct?
going to affect all of Canada.
And I made sure to call him Providence. I made the error of saying president before, Prime Minister Providence.
Yeah.
Getting a little better there. Yeah, it's sticky when you start talking about income and too much income, because that's completely relative in
It's
terms
completely
of.
relative and it's completely anti-capitalist, right? The
Yep.
capitalist society runs on entrepreneurs and people doing, and it's not like, people like us, we work very hard, as you know, right? It's not free money.
Yeah.
And as I always explain to people, sometimes, as we were saying, people who flip properties, just the word even flipping, it's considered to be negative term. And
Yeah.
people somehow look at you and they think that you are doing bad things, or that you're not being honest, or that you're making too much money. And I've literally heard that comment several times coming from, even friends or acquaintances, kind of saying, oh yeah, we know you make so much money. But what they don't realize is that during that time, first of all, it's not cash, right? It's the money that we're using. And obviously we're paying a lot of interest on it, and we're paying a lot of fees that people don't even think about, but they're holding fees.
Yep.
And there are all sorts of other fees, that taxes and everything that has to be accounted for. And not only that, but during the time that we work on that property, let's say it takes us 4 months or 6 months, because usually we do pretty big rehabs when we do that, we have no income.
Yep.
So we live off our credit line. So whatever profit we make, first of all, it ends up being taxed, like it's 40%. And then you have to pay, $25,000 or $30,000 to a real estate agent. And then whatever is left, it's basically the money that we didn't make for the last 6 months that we were working on the property.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, like you said, making a profit, what's reasonable, what's unreasonable, people don't realize that in most cases, doing something like that, it's a job, and it's a hard job, and it's an honest job.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's the part that, like, they always say the same thing about how you make a lot of money, and we're probably out on a beach somewhere and we don't work that hard. Like, my nights and weekends are pretty booked up. Like, I don't go on vacations. I don't spend frivolously. Pretty much all of my money is going back into it to make that the end game where I can retire eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just gets super. What I wish they would do, because we do follow the same guidelines. We get inspected by the same inspectors. We pay property taxes. We follow all the rules that they follow. I don't think we can be penalized on the profit. But what I wish they would do, and we were speaking about this before, where flippers get the bad name is where they cut corners, and they don't do it as if that was their own property. Where if I walk in, and we're doing a rehab right now where we weren't supposed to touch the bathroom, but as we were running into the wall going into the bathroom, we were seeing water damage.
Oh,
So I
no.
called the owner of the property. I was like, hey, you might have a big problem in your bathroom. I really think we should pull this wall apart. And when we pulled the wall apart, we saw the roof trusses were rotten through. The headers over the windows were coming out basically like ash. And those are big, substantial headers. And you could basically grab it and crumble it in your hand with how much water was seeping down. So that wasn't in our scope of work. I fear that there's other contractors would be like, well, that wasn't in our bid. We're not going to touch it. But I look at it like, if we do this and you put all the money into the rooms around where your area is, and then your house falls down, like, that's not going to help you either.
Right.
So now we're tapping into insurance because this is like a bigger claim of theirs that they're going to have to do. And I can't see that just cover it back up and act like we didn't see it. Like that doesn't register in my brain. So I do wish that they would come down and make flippers a little bit more accountable for what they're doing and the work that they're putting into it.
Yeah.
Taking out supporting structures and
Well,
trying to.
yeah, here we have, whenever somebody buys, they obviously, bring inspector in. But again, as you know, inspector can only see what they can see, right? They don't necessarily
Exactly.
see everything that's inside the walls. So
Yep,
yeah.
that's the tough
That's
part.
why, the way we do work, first of all, we're just not, as people, we're incapable of cutting corners and doing something bad. And second, we just want to be clean. When we sell something, we want to know ourselves that we've done everything right and that they're not going to come back and sue us in the 6 months or a year for something, because we really don't need that stress in our life. We
Right.
want to sleep
Got
well.
enough stress.
Yeah, we want to sleep well at night and we want to go on vacation and enjoy our time. So when we do a job, we focus on it and we put our 100% into it. And then when we sell it, honestly, we had one instance where we had to redo the roof, and we did it, because it was something, we did the roof, but the materials that we used was the first time we used that type of materials, which we'll never use again. And it just, after a year or two, it just started coming apart, and the owners called us and we went back, and it cost us like an extra $4,000, but we had to redo the whole roof, and we did it.
Yeah. Yep. One of the things that you're the last one that touched it, it's kind of have to be fixed. So you bite the bullet on it. But I'm sure that they made. What were you gonna say?
Funny. I got a phone call from the Oconomowoc City wastewater department yesterday, because apparently some plumber on our street left a tool in the pipes out, like in the street. So they're trying to figure out whose house it was at. And I was like, no plumber really came out here. They just scoped, but they didn't actually do any plumbing. So it'll be interesting to find out whose plumber it was.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I'm guessing they're going to need that tool. Is it clogging? Is that why they're wondering? Or are they looking for the tool? What was their?
No, I think it's clogging or something.
Oh, that's
because they wanted to find out who hired the plumber, because the tool is still in there. So
wow. that's a bad plumber.
Yeah.
Right? Interesting.
Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to touch on what you're getting into. You were talking about, I would still say international, but you're in Canada anyways, but more international. Where are you headed to next? What's your idea?
Well, yeah. So as I mentioned before, we had experienced in the last 10 years, we kind of on a spur of a moment, very emotionally bought a pre-construction in Dominican Republic. And then the house was built and we owned it for 10 years. And we traveled there quite frequently, and there was a lot of positive things about it, but there were also some negative things. And so after a certain period of time, after 5-6 years, we kind of decided to sell it. It took us a long time to sell it for all sorts of reasons, but now it's finally sold. Everything is finished. It's quite an interesting and stressful experience, buying a property in a different country and selling a property. And my Spanish is okay, but not like fantastic. So that's also adds an extra level of complexity, plus you don't really know all the processes and how things work now. At this point, we're taking a little break in terms of kind of giving ourselves, a chance to settle. We want to travel. We want to look at other places. We are considering Florida, actually. I didn't mention that. It was on our list of contenders just for investment property, for renting it out, not necessarily because I want to be in Florida. We were thinking of maybe the West Coast, but West Coast of Florida, like around Tampa and Sarasota. But of course,
we just had a property manager on from the Tampa area on our show.
I'm sorry, what?
We just had a property manager who does those type of
renovations.
Yeah,
Rentals.
It's the Tampa region.
Yeah.
Might have to connect you if that's going to be a viable.
Yeah,
area for you.
actually, well, we are open to looking at a fixer upper in that area. Our budget is quite limited, so that's what's kind of we're not sure, because for what we can afford, from what I saw on MLS, it was pretty horrible, and I really don't know the areas there at all. I don't know the neighborhoods, so that's super important to eventually, like if we're going to investigate it seriously, to find a trustworthy realtor and then maybe fly down there for a few days to actually see it. So that's one of the areas that we were considering. And then we accidentally, kind of through a friend, discovered that there is potential to buy quite cheaply, unexpectedly cheaply, in some areas in Europe, in Southern Europe, places like Croatia, Greece, and south of Italy. And so we're just in the process of kind of generally looking at properties, what's available at what price. We have certain criteria that my husband really wants to be very close to the sea. So, but honestly, it's very exciting because I never thought that those are the possible opportunities. And we see, and because we have the renovation skills, we are not afraid of taking on a property that needs some renovations or cosmetic changes. So that actually is exciting for us. So we're kind of thinking of maybe buying like a small two apartment building and fixing it up, and maybe staying part of the year in one unit and then Airbnb it.
That'd be really fun.
It
That's
would be.
exciting.
And of course I would advertise it to everybody I know in North America.
Sure, heck yeah.
Absolutely. I've been meaning to get over, especially if you go to Italy. Let me know if you get that spot.
I
because
will.
I've been,
For now, it's contender number one. So if things go according to like my research and stuff, we were planning a nice trip in the spring anyway. We just want to move forward with our flip. Like, we need to do some work actually to move the house forward.
yeah.
But we might go for 3 weeks to Italy and just go explore the areas that we've identified where we can afford to buy a house close to the beach, and look at them, on site to make a final decision. But then again, we don't speak any Italian at all. My Spanish at this point is actually okay. I can get by even with more complicated topics, but Italian is pretty much at zero at this point.
Italian and Spanish are just basically the same language. So
yeah, and I speak French, but it's still not quite the same. Anyway, I'm not worried. I'm sure we can figure it out.
So you've got 3 languages.
At 4. I speak Russian. My first language is Russian. I went to school in French. I went to university in English, and my Spanish is just from my traveling and being in Dominican Republic, regularly.
That's amazing.
So now it looks like I'm gonna have to learn some Italian.
That is impressive. I struggle with English. So I did a few years of Spanish, but they don't really push secondary language, at least from when I was going through school in America. They would take Spanish classes. They offered French. They offered Latin, but that's really about it. And it wasn't a main core curriculum. And I do see the trend of people outside of the US being pushed with language.
And I think if you look at Europeans, it's crazy how, especially like Northern Europe, people in like Norway, Sweden, their English is perfect.
Yeah,
and
probably
all
better
the
than
younger
mine.
and the younger generations now, pretty much in all the countries, we even see this trend in Dominican Republic, where I would say people under 30 are quite proficient or trying to be proficient and willing. They want to speak English because they realize, everybody realizes that the more multilingual you are in the world that we live in today, the more opportunities it gives you for travel, for work, for business, for personal relationships, for whatever, for everything.
Yep. I know Spanish is something on my list to get back into. Like, I'd love to learn Spanish. The only Italian I know is from my Nana, who would speak Italian around the house, but it was broken Italian.
Yeah.
But her parents would only speak Italian, which was it just gets diluted over time because there's not a big
Yeah.
importance to keep that culture going.
Mhm.
But one
We
day,
looked at Spain as well, but we haven't really found there what appealed to me, at least visually. With the places we looked at looked a little bit too touristy, a little bit too perfect, like complexes.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
you know, like residences with all the same little houses for British tourists or for British expats who want to have some sun. I want something a little bit more out of the box and more authentic.
yeah. Well, that's super cool. I'm excited to hear where that takes you. So
Let's
next time
talk again
on,
in 6 months and I'll fill you in.
yeah, next time on the show, I want to see you with a new background, something in either Italy or I'm rooting for Italy or Florida. Those are my two picks for you.
Okay, I'll
But
let you know.
We'll see where it takes you.
I'll let you know. Thank you very
Awesome.
much for your time, guys. Really appreciate it. Nice talking to you.
You too. You too. Enjoy your weekend and good
You
luck house
too.
hunting.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.